Over the last 12 months, there has been a lot of darkness in our world. We've seen this, we've experienced this. It's been a lot of grief. You look at the number of people who've died, especially in the United States and in part of Europe, and you sort of think, what's happened? We've been very blessed here in Australia. We've not had that many deaths from COVID. But in other parts of the world, it's brought a darkness. And I'm sure there's a gloom and a fearfulness about the future that it's placed upon community. Our readings today remind us of the love of God. And during our journey towards Easter, the experience of Lent sometimes can be one of darkness. That we look around and we sort of have this purpley colour, we sort of start to think about sin, we start to think about our brokenness, and that we can get to the stage where we sort of have this experience of desolation, of depression almost. Sometimes Catholics become so focused on this sin and this darkness in our life that guilt starts to eat away at us, and it can become very negative. And it easily happens. It's perhaps part of people's psychological makeup, perhaps their own mental illness at times, or their wellness at times. In the midst of all this, the church pauses from focusing on negativity. And we're asked to be reminded that what all of this time is about is the love of God. We aren't made for darkness. We aren't made for death. We aren't made to be wailing and crying. The psalm today, we have the Jewish people at the rivers of Babylon. There they sat and wept. And it required a pagan king, King Cyrus, to come to these Jewish people and say, hey, you don't need to be sad. It's okay, and I'm going to allow you, and I'm going to encourage you to rebuild the temple. And sometimes when we drop our bundle because of whatever's happened, because of death, because of destruction, because of illness, because of a global disaster, we need somebody occasionally to say, that's not who you are. We are better than this. God's created us to be better than this. And so Paul, writing to the Ephesians in the second reading, says that we are God's work of art. Each and every one of us are a work of art. And God doesn't create rubbish. God doesn't create a mess. God doesn't create darkness. We're told that God creates light. And so in the midst of this darkness, we're called to be the light. This is the joy of our faith. That God has loved us so much that we don't need to be remaining in darkness, that we're called to be a light. And that God has created us for this. And what a joy this is. And so in the midst of all this journey towards darkness, you could say, Good Friday is often a dark day. We're called to be reminded that we are people of light. And that our faith is not to go and spread darkness, but to spread joy, to spread love in everything that we do. So this week, during Lent, spread joy. Don't necessarily spread darkness. Don't necessarily spread guilt. But spread joy and spread love. Because that's what we've been created to be. And the church gives us this week, and this week especially, is a very special week. We get a few days off Lent. Every Sunday, as I've said in the last few weeks, is a little mini Easter. That when we come and we worship God, we also have a little experience of Easter every Sunday. And so we pause what we do during Lent to celebrate a little bit of version of Easter every Sunday during Lent. But this coming week, we get 2 extra days to celebrate that are not days of Lent. On Wednesday is the Solemnity of St. Patrick, a great missionary who brought the faith to the people of Ireland. Pray for the people of Ireland on Wednesday and pray for the intercession of St. Patrick. He's one of the patrons of this country as well. The Irish brought the faith, firstly, they were the first people to bring the Catholic faith to this country, to this specific place. So let's pray for their intercession and pray that St. Patrick will help us to bring about not darkness, but light within our community. And then on Friday is the Solemnity of St. Joseph. Late last year, Pope Francis proclaimed this year as the year of St. Joseph, for us to recognise the great quality of St. Joseph, who is there. You've got his son, or the stepson, is Jesus Christ. He becomes the foster father. And you have Mary, conceived without sin. Mary's pretty incredible. But Joseph is pretty much like all of us. He was weak. He failed at times. He sinned at times. But he didn't allow that to eat away at him. He could have had an inferiority complex, but he didn't. He had joy. He had love. And he spread that, and he became a great care for Jesus and for Mary. And so we celebrate his solemnity on Friday. Throughout the last few days already, and going right up until Friday, we've been praying a novena at the 8 a.m. Mass in preparation for this solemnity on Friday. So after communion today, we'll kneel down and we'll pray the novena prayers in preparation for this solemnity of St. Joseph. Let's not allow the darkness that's happened across the world in the last 12 months to take away our hope. The future is meant to be bright and positive. We are God's work of art, and we're not called to go into the world to bring more darkness, but to bring light. So let's go into the world this week, bringing joy, bringing love, and spreading goodness to everybody we engage with this week.